the Q document. We don't have any copies of this document. I'm convinced it was a real written document. Some scholars want to say, well, we don't have any evidence it was a written document, so it could have been an, oral traditions and that sort of thing. Well, I just think that the way that Matthew and Luke both sound verbatim the same means they're not working from oral tradition. They both have a document in front of themselves.
So the Gospels themselves are these three, and there are 4 sources. So what are those 4 sources? Well, actually, one of the sources is Mark itself, right? Because, as you noted in the reading, all but 18 verses of the Gospel of Mark show up in one or both of Matthew and Luke. So it's like Mark wrote his first, and a couple decades pass, and Matthew and Luke are coming along, and they just want to add a little flair. They each have a little different thing they want to say, but they're starting with the basic story, and they're adding to it in some various ways. So Mark is a source for Matthew and for Luke. Do you see what I'm saying there? Okay. Then we've noticed there are a group of stories that Matthew and Luke have in common. We've noticed that they have quite a few stories in common that do not show up in Mark. We call it Q, which is the first letter of the German word Quelle, which means source. So Q is a source for Luke and for Matthew. At the end of the day, we've noticed that there are a handful of stories that only show up in Matthew. They don't show up in Mark or Luke or even in John. And the same goes for Luke, right? And we'll do this with it, right? So to show that these are sources. When we talk about sources, what do I mean, right? Do I mean that there's a book of these stories that someone knew about? No. We're probably talking about someone who's passed through town and who knows or has been passing along these stories associated with Jesus.
And I think we can say some intelligent things. We can tell, that it's a book mainly of sayings. Yeah. It doesn't seem to have, a lot of narrative. It doesn't seem to have, except maybe the narrative of Jesus being tempted by Satan. That could be part of it. But it certainly doesn't have, a nativity scene, and it doesn't have even a crucifixion scene. The Q from a very early time was not read out loud in churches as part of the liturgy.